Hey, Stolen Cousins. Go on and like that video. You can like it, grab your blanket, grab your blunt, grab your drink. I don't know what time you watching this at. I ain't about to tell you not to drinky drink. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's a Friday somewhere. Um, yeah, get your stuff. Comment done that you got your stuff. Comment what you got. What you smoking on? What you doing? You know? Share with someone if you want to, it would, help a fellow cousin out. But hey, that's on you. If you don't want to support your family and be weird like that, that's on you. But what? 3 true Chuck E. Cheese horror stories animated. Why am I so intrigued? Because I used to love Chuck E. Cheese. I still love Chuck E. Cheese to this day. So what are they doing at Chuck E. Cheese? Why are they doing stuff at Chuck E. Cheese? So let's get into it. Hopefully it's not too bad. Because I'ma still go. They tried to say the Chuck E. Cheese pizza was all pieces of the old pizza, and I still don't care. They ain't got nothing to do with me.
There's an old saying that goes, you can take a person out of a place, but you can never take the place out of the person. And to be honest, that's exactly how I felt as I sat there and watched the peculiar scene play out before my very eyes. My name is Ethan Carter, and I used to be an FBI agent. I gave 13 years of my life to that job, and I loved every second of it. At the time, I thought I'd be an agent forever, as I had no plans for settling down, but that was before I met Alice. A wonderful
wife. Crazy, Alice.
It didn't take long before we had a son, and I decided to retire so that I could spend more time with him. I more or less became a stay-at-home dad while my wife worked. And while I did some other jobs here and there on the side, I spent most of my time with my wonderful son, Matthew. Now that you're all caught up, this brings me back to the very beginning of the story, where I reminded everyone of a very popular old saying. I thought of this saying while I sat in a nearby branch of the famous restaurant called Chuck E. Cheese with my son of the 12th of October, 2016. At that time, we had this tradition called Chuck E. Cheese Thursday, as my son loved the restaurant Chuck E. Cheese. So I had set out a day every week to take him there after school. And as we sat there, I noticed something very odd. Chuck E. Cheese, or as the children called him, Mr. Cheese, was acting in a very peculiar manner. Now, to every normal Jim in the restaurant, nothing was wrong, because to them, they just saw someone wearing the Chuck E. Cheese mascot costume and playing a character. But to a former FBI agent, I knew something was wrong with the person wearing the fur suit.
Why are you so nosy?
For the 13 years of my life, I learned and mastered something called nonverbals, widely known as body language, during my time at the FBI. So I could tell a lot of things from a person's body movements, mannerisms, and the way they act, without having them say a single word. And as soon as I noticed those movements, my mind reverted back to a similar groove. As even though I was sitting in a Chuck E. Cheese restaurant, my mind acted as if I was back in the FBI. I watched as my 7-year-old Matthew ran up to him with excitement in his eyes, and I carefully studied their interactions. For starters, I noticed that the man inside the costume reacted the exact same way when he met every child. It was like a broken record, as he literally did the exact gestures perfectly. Now, that wasn't what bothered me. No, what bothered me was how he acted in between intervals when he wasn't meeting any children. As immediately there weren't any children around, his whole body language changed. He pulled his legs behind him like he was extremely tired. The arched movements of his abdomen made it seem like he was having some difficulty breathing, and any normal human being in that kind of situation could easily just go to the back and take a break. But he didn't. And it's not because he didn't want to. It was because he couldn't do it. All his body movements screamed that he was being forced to do this, as he was literally a hostage walking in broad daylight. I was about to walk up to him to check and see if my intuition was true, but before I could reach him, he was ambushed by several kids and their parents asking to take pictures. My son then ran back into my arms with a yawn on his face. I could tell he was tired and it was time to go home. As we walked out of the restaurant, I stared directly at the man wearing the mascot, and I gave him a huge smile as I told myself that I was surely going to find out whatever was going on with him next I returned. I went back the next day after dropping my son off. I ordered some food, and and I started observing the man wearing the Chuck E. Cheese mascot. As I watched him for a while, I began to notice a few things. For one, the manager watches the man wearing the Chuck E. Cheese mascot like a hawk. It was as if he was keeping him under surveillance. Another thing I noticed was that as soon as the man wearing the Chuck E. Cheese mascot stepped out of character or showed a bit of fatigue, the manager would shoot him a look of pure disgust and hatred. It didn't take long before I put two and two together. I knew something was going on, but I couldn't do anything about it yet, as I didn't have any proof. So I walked up to the man wearing the Chuck E. Cheese mascot, and I said, "How's it going, Mr. Cheese?" The man then looked at me and said, "It's going great, friend. Have a wonderful day." And with that, he walked away. I stood there stunned because of what I had just heard. It was hard to tell because the muffled sound was coming out of the furry costume, but I could distinctively tell that what actually responded was a recording, as I was sure the man inside the costume didn't speak. Instead, he played a pre-recorded track as an answer. That was extremely strange, and I remember asking myself why he didn't just use his normal voice to answer instead of recording. I was still confused, but I carried out my next step. I walked up to the counter and asked for the manager. When he came out, I asked what his name was. The man then said, "Christopher Harris, sir," with a huge smile on his face. I observed him, and he seemed normal and kind, but I needed to see if my theory was correct. So I said, "Can I please ask a favor? You see, I have a 7-year-old son, and he absolutely adores the person that plays Mr. Cheese in the restaurant. Is it possible if I could meet the man and ask if he would like to play the character at my son's birthday party at home? I promise I will pay him well." When I was done, I noticed that the manager's mood and mannerisms had changed as he began to stutter and give excuses like, I don't think he would be able to do that. You know, he's pretty shy, and he only wants to work here, and maybe you could." As he continued to blubber out more lies, I noticed that his palms were sweaty now, and his eyes were darting around the room like he was in trouble. All this further proved my point that there was something seriously shady going on.
Can
I was going to find out
host my kid's birthday party?
So I thanked him and told him that I'd find another person to do the job. I left the restaurant, but I didn't leave the premises. I called my wife and told her to pick up our son from school, as I wouldn't be able to make it home tonight. When I was done,
you are so nosy, sir. You are not FBI no more.
I stayed there till about 9 p.m.
You are stay-at-home dad.
I saw all the employees leave one by one, and soon enough, everyone had come out except the manager and the man wearing the mascot. I waited till 10 o'clock before I finally saw them. I watched as the manager took the man wearing the Mr. Cheese mascot to a small storage unit behind the restaurant. They both went in, and after 30 minutes, only the manager came out. I watched as he locked the door with a padlock before going to his car and driving home. I was perplexed now, as I wondered why a manager would be keeping one of his employees under lock and key. It began to seem like my suspicions were true, but I still needed a little more concrete proof. So I got out of the car, and I made my way to the small storage unit building. I easily hacked the padlock as it was opened in less than 6 minutes. I then quietly opened the door and walked in. The rancid smell coming from the inside of the storage unit was horrible, as it made my face scrounge up. The floor was wet, as a washed Chuck E. Cheese mascot costume was dripping water all over the floor. As I walked further, my eyes darted all around the small room, till eventually landed on a battered man lying in the corner. He was lying on a ragged mat with his back towards me, so I couldn't see or make out his face. He was in a crouched position, as there wasn't enough floor space for him to lie down freely. It was obvious that he had been brutally beaten in here, as the bruises on his body were still fresh. My mind didn't have any explanation as to what was going on, so I tapped him to get some answers. Startled, the man turned around, and as soon as I saw his face, I was mortified.
His mouth is sewn shut.
His face was swollen beyond recognition. Whoever had beaten him up clearly hated this man with a passion, but his disfigured face wasn't what horrified me. No, what made me horrified was the fact that his bloody mouth was sewn shut. I could see the infected, perforated holes on the top and bottom of his lips. I could also see the unimaginable pain on the man's disfigured face when he tried to open his mouth to talk.
Like, is you gonna help him? Why would you even try to ask him questions in there? That sounds dumb as shit to me. I managed
to calm the man down, too. I tried to call someone for help, but the man shook his head vigorously as he didn't want me to do that. I then asked, "Did your boss do this to you? Because if he did, Don't worry, I can get him thrown in jail for a very long time. Before I could finish, the man grabbed me by the shoulders and looked me dead in the eyes. No words were said as tears started rolling down.
Like, why are you having this conversation in there, my guy? Like, get him out of there in your car, drive somewhere. He probably ain't eating mad long.
I had been in situations similar to this, so I knew exactly what I had to do.
Do you?
I calmly got up and said, "It's all right. I understand. I won't tell anyone about this. You never saw me, and I was never here." The look of relief in his eyes answered my statements as I slowly backed away towards the door of the storage unit. When I finally left, I didn't go home. I went back to my car to make some phone calls, and when I was done, I waited for the manager. It was 1 p.m. when I finally made my move. I waited till the restaurant was filled with people, as it was better that way. I walked in, and I noticed the manager going to his office. So I quickly followed him, and before he could enter his office, I confronted him. He immediately became nervous when he saw me, as he said, "Oh, it's you again, sir. Did you later find someone else to entertain the children at your son's birthday party?" I didn't let him finish as I cut him off by saying, "I know what you did." Confused, the manager said, "I'm sorry, I have no idea."
I thought you said you wasn't about to tell nobody.
I then looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I know everything that you've done to the man wearing the Chuck E. Cheese mascot outside. I've already called the cops, so they'll be here any minute now. But before they drag you away, I would like to ask one question. Why? What did the man ever do to deserve that?" A sick grin was now plastered all over the manager's face as he said, "Your feeble mind can never understand why. I had a duty to perfectly bring that character to life. I needed that man to be one with Chuck, and I was going to do anything to make sure that he was, regardless of what I had to do to him. He had to be as perfect as John Weidler and Scott Wilson. These men gave that character life when the Chuck E. Cheese mascot was first introduced. They did it magically, as I was amazed by their performance when I was a child. So when I was given the opportunity to be the manager, I swore to reproduce that magic, no matter what it took." After blubbering complete nonsense for the past few minutes, he then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I had to do it for the children. It was all for the children, and I don't regret it." When he was done, I didn't need anyone to tell me that this man had been playing an act in public. The mask he carried around was finally off, and I came to realize that deep down, he was nothing but a messed up psychopath. I had dealt with people like this before, so I knew exactly what came next after their psychotic breakdown. I watched as he bolted to the forefront of the restaurant with a tense look on his face. Seeing as I knew how his mind worked, I already predicted that he was going to grab a kid, so I quickly tackled him before he managed to do that. And within minutes, we were all surrounded by cops. Investigations were quickly carried out, and soon enough, everything was brought to light.
The
abused man, after he had been taken to the hospital and cleaned up, was identified as Jose Hernandez, a 19-year-old illegal Mexican immigrant. Around 2 years ago, he had managed to cross the dangerous U.S. border, but his father was shot in the process, and he was eventually separated from his mother. Jose then started to explain how everything happened, as he said, "The last thing I was told about my mother was that she was either captured or killed, and I soon came to terms with the fact that my mother was dead now too, which made me an orphan in a foreign land. After grieving the loss of my parents, I traversed many areas on the street looking for jobs so I could make some money to eat. And that's when I met the man called Christopher Harris, as he found me on the side of the road." Jose told us the manager had picked him up from the side of the road under the lure of having a job for him. He then told us how things went from there, saying, "During the first few weeks of the job, Mr. Christopher began to brutally groom me into becoming the character Chuck E. Cheese. He explained how the manager hated his voice because of his Mexican accent, as Mr. Harris really hated it whenever he spoke in the Chuck E. Cheese costume. Apparently, Mr. Christopher believed he was unfit to be the voice of Chuck, so he gave him generic pre-recorded messages to play anytime he was confronted by customers and children." Jose then told us, "Even after I was given the recorded messages, I still found it hard not to speak when spoken to, as I still used my voice from time to time." Through tears, he then explained how the manager truly hated this, as he said, "Mr. Christopher really hated it when I did that, and in order to put a stop to it, my mouth was morbidly sewn shut, and the threads were only removed when it was time for me to feed." Jose told us the constant ghastly act of repeatedly sewing and loosening his mouth had made him lose almost all sensation in his lips before continuing with. No matter what was done to me, I knew that I couldn't go to the police because being an illegal immigrant with no papers made sure that it wasn't an option. No one needed to tell me that I couldn't do anything about the morbid way I was being treated, so I had no choice but to bear it. He then revealed that after a while, to his surprise, he found out his mother was still alive and she had managed to contact him. I remember when I told Mr. Christopher the good news, he started to beat me mercilessly. He did this because the apparent backstory of the Chuck E. Cheese character stated that Chuck E. Cheese was an orphan, and now that my mother was alive, I wasn't able to truly become the character. He said Mr. Christopher hated unfixable imperfections when playing the Chuck E. Cheese character, so he threatened to replace him as he was now unfit to be the character. Apparently, Mr. Christopher had told him the week before that he was already looking for replacements along the border, and once he had found a suitable person, he promised Jose that he would get rid of him. Jose then finally said that if it wasn't for me finding him, he would most likely be dead now. After the police finished questioning the abused victim, more investigations were carried out, and it was revealed that Jose wasn't the first person to undergo the messed up, brutal method acting that Christopher Harris.
Who else has he been kidnapping?
When asked what he did with the rest of them, the manager confessed that most of them died due to the brutal treatment that they were put through. And in order to dispose of them, he took their bodies upstate to a family-owned farm and fed their remains to pigs, as that was the best way to leave no trace.
It is.
The farm was searched by forensics, and small remnants, traces of over 8 victims were found, but it was impossible to identify any one of them. At the end of the trial, when the case was coming to a close, the psychopath, Christopher Harris, was given life imprisonment. As he told his lawyer, he didn't want to plead insanity. After the buzz of the case had simmered down, I pulled some strings with some of my friends in immigration, and with a good lawyer, I managed to get Jose to stay in the United States, and I also made sure that he was eventually reunited with his mother. I normally visit them every now and then, just to see how they're doing. Over 6 years have passed since all this happened, and to be honest, this incident made me see family-oriented places and restaurants in a different light, as these places were where we bring kids and families to have fun and put smiles on their faces. And as a parent, never in a million years would I have ever thought that a place like that would also be a treading ground for a deranged psychopath. So I guess what I'm trying to say is
that was definitely like, damn, these are there's three stories then.
Look just like
that was a long story for the number one. A long good
If you're
story.
enjoying this content, make sure you like and subscribe.
Exactly. On my channel and theirs. Go to SSG Animations to like and subscribe to them too.
Hi, my name's Hunter. I will share the horrific experience I went through at Chuck E. Cheese. This story might make you and your family never visit Chuck E. Cheese anymore.
Probably not.
The incident happened 5 years ago during my niece's birthday party. My sister had decided to celebrate her child's birthday in a grand style. It was her 5th birthday party after all, and her husband, a manager at Chuck E. Cheese, shut down a whole section in the arcade game center for the party. They invited many people, children and parents alike. I didn't want to attend because I was going through a phase at the time, and I thought Chuck E. Cheese was meant for kids. But then I remembered my crush works there part-time, and she'd be working for the party. So I decided to attend with some of my friends. When the day came, I dressed better than I did on my own birthday. I was trying to impress my crush. Little did I know that I would regret stepping foot inside Chuck E. Cheese. The party ended around 6 p.m. Most of the guests had gone home. I decided to stay back with some of my friends who I invited. I wanted to help with the cleanup. Why? Well, I was determined to impress my crush and take her home after. I waited for all the guests to leave. Her and I talked for about an hour while cleaning up together. Then, I felt the urge to ease myself. I went to the gents' room. As I opened the door, I bumped into a man who was going out of the toilet. He seemed in a hurry. "Oh, sorry," I said as I lifted my head to meet his gaze. His glaring eyes stared at me. His look was scary. He had a scar on his left cheek and a couple of tattoos on his right cheek and forehead. Weird. He brushed off his jacket and went away without making much sound.
Damn.
If that wasn't weird, I thought to myself.
He's violent. I
felt the tightness in my bladder again.
He's on that. He ain't even say,
forgot I had to pee.
Or you're excused.
I tried to open one of the toilet doors. The first one seemed jammed. Nobody replied or knocked back. I assumed it was just out of order. It took me another second to notice the feet by the gap between the toilet door. It was clearly someone in a costume, one of the Chuck E. Cheese mascots at the party, I presumed. Why didn't he say anything or make a sound while I tried to open the door? I thought to myself as I was about to grab the door to the next toilet. Then, I heard a loud thud from inside the first toilet. The door opened up, and suddenly, I saw the body of a man in a mascot costume fall on the floor of the bathroom. The head of the mascot costume was missing. He was only wearing the body of the outfit. My eyes stared at the body against my will. I was in shock. His face was pale, and his eyes were still open.
Whose body is that?
He was not moving or making a sound, though. Even a child could tell that he was dead. I let out an unmanly whimper and fell back on the floor. I was shocked. I picked up myself after a few seconds and dashed out the door to get help. As soon as I got outside the door, I saw the man I bumped into earlier while trying to get to the toilet.
Killer.
He was standing in front of the bathroom. He seemed to notice how petrified I was, and he moved towards me with a ferocious look in his eyes.
Get about!
With every step he took towards me, I could feel shivers down my spine as he moved closer.
You better not back your ass back up in that bathroom.
My eyes quickly scanned around for an escape route as I saw a knife in his hand.
Killer.
I turned left and tried to run away. He picked up his pace and started to run after me. I ran as fast as possible.
Alright, come on now, hurry.
I ended up in the amusement ride section there. I saw one of the attendants who was also cleaning up when I arrived. I told her about what I had seen and that a man was after me and she should call for help. She didn't believe me though. She thought I was one of the creepy guys who smoked heroin in the bathroom. Plus, I reeked of urine. I pushed her away and ran into the amusement ride section. As I got in, the scary man showed up behind the girl. I tried to warn her, but she was hesitant. As she turned around, he drove the knife into her throat and pulled it out. Blood gushed out. She turned back at me with blood flowing from her mouth and throat.
Why would she do that? Ain't nobody's fault but her own.
The scary man tried to catch up with me at the amusement rides, but I had hidden in one of the seats. Every step he took had a resounding force of fear. Come on out now, he said, almost whimpering. His voice sounded even scarier than his footsteps. I know what you've seen, and I can't let you get away with it, he said. It dawned on me that he was the one who killed the dead guy in the mascot costume.
Look at that.
He was trying to erase any witnesses. I cried silently and crawled into the seat further. I kept praying to God in my mind for help as he moved closer to where I was hiding. I saw his shadow. It looked haunting. My eyes opened glaringly as I tilted my head to look back. He was there with his knife, pointing directly above me. The adrenaline in my body skyrocketed and eroded any form of fear that I felt at that instant.
You better defend yourself.
I moved my head quickly, but not before the knife sliced a part of my ear. I shouted and jumped up out of the seat. He managed to grab and hold on to one of my legs and stabbed it. I had never felt such great fear in an instant in my entire life.
Slit up. You're not even
I pushed him back with my other leg and crawled forward with a knife still stuck in my leg.
Alright, now pull it out of your leg
and
stab
another knife from under his jacket.
He got 2 knives.
And now stabbed me in the back. I let out a cry. He stabbed me again, this time by my side. But I kept crawling in my blood without any sense of direction.
I knew Hunter was gonna be the hunted. His name is Hunter. Anybody that named their child Hunter ain't got no faith in their life. Why would you name your kid Hunter? Got him out here being stabbed up. He did not defend himself once. The knife is still in his leg. He could have pulled it out and tried to defend himself. Oh boy got 2 knives. What he doing walking around Chuck E. Cheese with 2 knives is so mind-baffling to me. I'm talking, you see, I told you. He said at the beginning, oh, this story's gonna make y'all not want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. I promise you it's not. Because I promise you, I see a dead body in the bathroom, I'm getting up out of there. I promise you, old boy ain't gonna be, he ain't gonna be bullying me at no damn bathroom. Boy, this is the bathroom. Why? And you done pissed yourself? So now you're pissy and you're stabbed up. Oh, girl thought you were a druggie. You sat there and watched her die. She didn't believe you. That was your cue to get up out of there. Why are you in the goddamn rides being hunted? Hunter? Oh, pissing me off. Let's watch Hunter get stabbed up. Let's finish it.
Me in the back. I let out a cry. He stabbed me again, this time by my side. But I kept crawling in my blood without any sense of direction or time.
Back, the side,
unable to scream.
Still in your other leg.
He seemed to enjoy watching me in pain. As I turned to beg for my life, he grabbed me by the leg, pulled me towards him, and pulled out the knife in my leg. I let out another shout of pain and began to call for help.
That you could have used
Nobody's gonna hear you.
Oh, you so damn dumb.
He said while cackling like a madman.
Now he got
both his knives back. As he attempted to stab me again, I bit his hand so hard it started to bleed.
Now you gon' bite him.
And slit my face
now
with his
you gon'
knife.
Bite him.
I let go of my teeth's grip and I pushed him away. I crawled out and got up.
You gonna defend yourself
just right
after being sliced up?
I was limping away from him with every ounce I had left, and he was trailing intentionally behind me while laughing. I was slowly losing consciousness when I sighted a slight metal piece in front of me. I fell to the floor intentionally, but mostly because my body was weak and dying, but also because I wanted to pick up and conceal the metal object. As he drew near me, I stabbed his eye with the remaining energy I had in me, cried out in pain, and held the eye that I had stabbed. I gathered my strength again and limped out of the amusement ride section. He also got up and shouted angrily while running after me with one hand over the damaged eye. As I retreated to escape, I heard sirens, police car sirens. The scary man ran away immediately.
They've been letting you get your ass tore up and they called the cops. Ain't nobody going there to help you.
Thankfully, the police found me in time. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was one of my friends rushing towards me. I didn't know how time had passed.
I totally forgot you're
as I opened my eyes, I could see a bright white room.
Hunter.
I thought
they
I was
don't like you. You better not ever talk to them people ever again.
I felt and thought as I opened my eyes. I realized eventually that I was in the hospital. It didn't take long when my aunt, mom, and friends rushed in.
That's
I'd been in the hospital for a week.
You mean your old friends? They're not your friends, Hunter. You don't know them people.
The doctors patched me up, but they said I was severely affected by the wounds and that I'd end up with scars. 2 weeks after, the police conducted their investigations and found out that the scary man, whose real name was Spencer Parker, was part of a group of people who'd go around to places like Chuck E. Cheese and amusement parks to kidnap kids and sell them off to human traffickers. The dead guy in the mascot costume was part of the group. He was disguised as a friendly mascot to lure kids, but he refused to work for them anymore, and that's why he was killed. He came back to clean up the body, and when he noticed that I found out about the body, he tried to kill me too. The Chuck E. Cheese Center closed down during the investigation. My uncle said he received the orders to shut down, and he was sent to another center as a manager. Many think the management of Chuck E. Cheese had something to do with the human traffickers, and quickly shut down to cover their tracks. This horrible incident still haunts me. I've not stepped into a Chuck E. Cheese since that day.
That's your story, though. That's not ours. We gotta enjoy Chuck E. Cheese. You should have been defended yourself. Your story would have ended a long time ago.
It's been 12 years, yet the memories of this incident are still fresh. I was 11 years old back when this incident happened.
Alright, just
It was a lovely Friday morning, and my younger sister and I were getting ready for school. I could still remember what we had for breakfast.
She looks
My
scary.
younger sister was just 5 years old then. My parents had a big fight after I was born, so they lived separately for a while before getting back together after 4 good years. I loved and cherished my younger sister. She was intelligent and kind. I was responsible for taking care of her, which I enjoyed doing. After breakfast, my sister and I exited the house. Sarah was thrilled. She'd always wanted to visit Chuck E. Cheese. All her friends had gone multiple times, but Mom wouldn't allow her to go, even if it was for birthday parties, because there were so many negative rumors about Chuck E. Cheese. So I promised to take her after school, and that
a few years ago when
was the worst decision I ever made.
Oh, don't lose your baby sister.
After school, I quickly picked Sarah up, and we headed for our forbidden journey. There was a Chuck E. Cheese down on our neighborhood, so we went there.
Big brothers lose their siblings.
It was magical.
It's so devastating.
Sarah was beyond excited. We explored the place and played many games. The mascots were nice and friendly. I also played a lot of games, and it was fun. I was carried away with the games, and I didn't realize it was getting dark. I kept checking my wristwatch. Little did I know that my wristwatch had stopped working. Suddenly, I heard the closing announcement. I looked at my watch again and realized the time was the same as the last time I checked it. I started panicking. Everywhere was empty, and I could only hear a few workers. I looked around and saw Sarah sleeping in a pool of balls. Probably that was why no one saw her, and I was at the last stall playing games. I woke Sarah up, and we headed out. I walked fast. I knew I was in big trouble. I'm going to be grounded for years. Mom's going to be so mad at me, I said with teary eyes.
Oh.
Keep up, Sarah, I said, looking back to check on Sarah when I didn't hear her response. I looked behind me, and I didn't see anyone. I walked back and called Sarah, but there was no response. Sarah, stop playing games.
We
need to leave. Mom's going to be worried, I said annoyingly. I thought she didn't want to leave. I kept looking, and I was getting furious. Suddenly, the light went out. It suddenly became so dark. The only thing I could see was some creepy toys with lights on them. I'm not scared. I'm not frightened, I kept muttering.
Oh,
Suddenly,
God.
I heard the floor creaking as if someone was trying to sneak up on me. I paused for a moment, and I looked back suddenly, hoping to catch a glimpse of whoever it was, even though I was scared as hell. Sarah, is that you?
I hope it's Sarah.
I
promise you, I hope it's Sarah. It's probably not, though, but I hope it's her.
This time, I was already in tears. I started shouting Sarah's name, but got no response. I started hearing noises like someone was trying to close the doors, so I ran towards the door. Help! Someone is still in here! The place suddenly became more prominent than it was when we entered because I couldn't get to the door on time. I hit the door a few times and heard a faint scream. It was Sarah.
Oh, get her!
Sarah! I exclaimed and ran towards the voice. I kept shouting Sarah's name, but there was no response.
Oh, please let him save her.
I was so scared and confused. I tried going back to the door. I was running towards the door when I slipped and fell. Something was on the floor. It felt like water, but it was sticky. I didn't bother checking what it was. I stood back up and proceeded to the door, and I noticed a stick, so I picked it up and banged the door with it. Someone's in here! Open the door! I kept hitting the door and shouting. After some minutes, I paused a bit to catch my breath. I couldn't stay calm. I was crying. Suddenly, I heard the door moving. Someone must have heard me and was trying to open the door. I took the stick and I continued hitting the door. Suddenly, I felt a figure behind me. As I looked back to check who it was, a hand covered my mouth with the other hand on my stomach. The figure dragged me away. I tried struggling, but I couldn't move a bit. It was a firm grip. The figure kept dragging me backward as I tried to break free. It was dark in there, but the figure knew his way. As he was pulling me away from the door, I could hear the door open, and I heard my dad's voice. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I tried to struggle harder, but I couldn't break free. My mom must be worried sick. My parents had gone to my school to check on me when she got home from work and realized I wasn't home with my sister. And when she realized I wasn't at my school either, and neither was Sarah, she went to my best friend's house to check on me. Thankfully, I had told my best friend Ben about how I was going to Chuck E. Cheese with my sister, so my parents made their way to Chuck E. Cheese. Unfortunately, when the door was opened for them, I couldn't come out to meet them. The figure that grabbed me entered a room and threw me to the floor and locked the door. I finally saw his face. He was a muscular man, in his mid-20s at least. He also had a partner. Immediately, I landed on the floor. His partner covered my mouth with tape. His partner was much younger and had a skinny look. I was so scared. I didn't know their motive.
Parents got them hands.
I just knew I was in big trouble, and it was drastic. There was another door in the room. They opened the door and kicked me into the room with my hands tied.
Is Sarah in there?
I felt pains all over my body and then felt someone jump on me.
Oh, yes!
It was my sister. Her hands were also tied.
Okay, good shit. At least she's alive.
What kind
Y'all
of
can be in
monster
there
would tie
together.
the hands of a child?
Some kidnappers,
I burst into tears as I thought about horrible things that could happen next.
Oh, I hate. Oh,
I looked around and saw 2 little girls there that were younger than Sarah.
Oh!
I was young,
They
but
got mad
I
kids
knew I
up in
wouldn't
there.
leave there alive.
Oh!
I remembered seeing my dad, so I tried to make
Your
some
hands
noise.
is like this.
Probably he would hear me and rescue us.
Your parents need to
I
have
hit
them
my
hands,
body
so that
severely
means
on the
about to
door,
beat your
but the
daddy
noise
ass.
only attracted the bad guys.
What's making that noise?
The younger one snarled. He had an ugly expression and a very gruff voice, unlike his physical look. He walked close to me, and I moved back in fear.
It must be you. These little rats can't make any noise,
he said as he gave me a heavy slap. I fell to the ground and Sarah, already scared, ran towards me, crying. He carried Sarah up with one hand. Her legs were hovering.
Oh, let her go.
Sound, and I'll tear up your pretty little face with my knife,
he said as he wiggled a knife in his other hand.
Is that clear?
He said authoritatively, almost shouting. I nodded excessively, blinking my eyes, which must have been red due to all the tears. When they left the room, I moved closer to Sarah, who had already peed her pants, to calm her down, even if I was helpless. I regretted agreeing to take my sister to Chuck E. Cheese. After about 30 minutes in the hostage room, I had no option but to pray my dad would find us. I was already dozing off with Sarah on my lap. I heard a gunshot. I stood up and hid with Sarah and the 2 little girls. There was a commotion going on outside, and suddenly the doors opened.
Yeah, look at
Thankfully, it was the police. We were rescued, and my mom hugged my sister and me passionately. One of the bad guys was shot and the other was arrested. Paramedics came and took us to the hospital. The bad guys
It's so crazy
are
because
child
as
traffickers who've been kidnapping children
child,
for a long
you
time
would have still got your ass
and getting
whooped.
away with it.
You would have got the worst
They almost got away with
in your
kidnapping my
life.
sister and me because my dad had already decided we weren't in the Chuck E. Cheese Center. I was about to leave
But your mom.
when my mom saw my wristwatch.
Oh.
My wristwatch had fallen off when the bad guy was dragging me away. She quickly notified the police, and luckily the cops could trace my footsteps because when I slipped and fell, it wasn't water that made me drop. It was colored slime. So the slime left footprints, which helped the police figure out the bad guy's hostage room. It was a traumatic experience for my sister and me. It wasn't long before the Chuck E. Cheese Center closed down. My mom still believes Chuck E. Cheese is just a facade to kidnap children.
She definitely
I
does
still
now.
can't get over the fact that I went through all that at a Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh my gosh. That's so crazy. At a Chuck E. Cheese? Chuck E. Cheese. Like, Chuck E. Cheese? Oh, these kids are so hard-headed. Oh, as a kid, you would have got the worst whooping in your life. Yes, you're alive. Yes, you and your sibling are alive. She's getting whooped too. Because you could have told him no. You knew your mom did not like Chuck E. Cheese. One thing about black kids, they know there is nothing worse than going somewhere that you are not supposed to, but getting hurt in the place that you are not supposed to be. You almost got kidnapped. You almost got you and your sister kidnapped. Your dad was ready to go. If your mom didn't see that watch, you would have been dead. That would have been the worst whoop. You would have got whooped for 3 years after that. Every time they would have thought about Chuck E. Cheese, every time they see the Chuck E. Cheese commercial, every time they passed Chuck E. Cheese, every time someone else said Chuck E. Cheese, you would have got a whooping. because you could have been dead. Black parents will whoop you because you could have died. Just so you know not to do that shit again. You want to die? You ain't gonna die. Black parents will... I brought you in this earth. I'll take you out. Black line. Why? Because they mean it. Oh my God. I'm just thinking. I'm an only child. It's just me. My mom treats things like that. A moment of, I told you not to do this and now you got hurt as well. Oh my God, I would have been getting whooped till this day. Grown in my own house. She would have been calling me, you ready for your monthly whooping? From that time when you was 11, 12, and went to Chuck E. Cheese and almost got kidnapped? You remember? Yeah. Because, oh my God, why? Why would you bring you and your sister to Chuck E. Cheese by yourselves? Your mom said no for a reason. Kids always think it's not a good reason. A no from a parent is all you need. You want to go fuck around and find out. Now you got kidnapped, slapped, your sister almost, got choked out, both y'all pissy, like, oh, this was good. Who knew this was going to be so good? It's about Chuck E. Cheese. Hunter almost died, got hunted. I don't know why he still called them people his friends. I forgot he even went there with his friends. He was over there getting his ass tore up so bad. I forgot that he went there with friends. They did not go to help him. Someone called the cops to, get him saved, but they did not go to defend him. So who is your friend, Hunter? Why do you have friends? Oh, yes. Y'all like and comment on this video. Have you ever had something creepy to you? Let me calm down. Have you ever had something creepy happen to you at Chuck E. Cheese? I've never had a bad experience at Chuck E. Cheese. Only bad experience I had was not having enough tickets to get the prize I wanted. That's the only issue I've ever had at Chuck E. Cheese. Not having enough pizza. Them not having the crushed flakes or the Parmesan at the table. That's the only issue I've ever had at Chuck E. Cheese. Y'all going through these, y'all having issues at Chuck E. Cheese. And I'ma still take my kids there. Cause why? Like I said about old boy and his sister, if they parents, now just imagine if they parents went in there. That guy would have beat the shit out their daddy and their mama. Me and my husband, we gonna ride for our kids. Probably not. Well, no, we could defend them if we want to. That's what I mean. I say probably not, because if I told my kid not to go to Chuck E. Cheese, because I do not feel comfortable with you going to Chuck E. Cheese, and y'all go to Chuck E. Cheese, I go to your best friend's house, and little boy be like, oh, he said he was going to Chuck E. Cheese. I'm gonna look at my husband gonna be shaking his head because he already know me. He know. Now, if he has in his soul that he doesn't want to go to Chuck E. Cheese either, because I already told these little ass kids not to go, and we both know I mean what I say what I mean, and my husband don't be like, all right, baby, let's just go check at Chuck E. Cheese. Just, just to check. I'm going to be like, okay, little boy, and I'm going home, because I told your ass not to be there. I'm going home and making some of you kids that night. Because that little girl could have went home. You do not have to listen to your big brother. Siblings know in a household where you will get in trouble for following in a household. You get in trouble. You want to be a follower? Oh, all right. You want to follow someone to death? Almost die? Yes, you are getting in trouble. What? I would have definitely went right back home, made some new kids. Some kids that listen. Got some common sense. Mom say don't go to Chuck E. Cheese. They're not going to Chuck E. Cheese. That's just me. My husband gonna go with me because we locked. So I'd be like, baby, I ain't going to no damn Chuck E. Cheese. You heard me tell them kids every other day not to go to Chuck E. Cheese. I ain't bringing them Chuck E. Cheese. You bring them Chuck E. Cheese? You're going to be like, nah, I ain't bringing them Chuck E. Cheese. And we're not going. Now, if he be like, let's just check. We're going to check. Now, let me check and see your watch in there and no kids to be found. I'm still going home. Because I know you done got snatched up. And I told you not to be up in here. So now you're up in here and you got snatched up. What do I look like going in here when I could just go and make some more kids? The people that are going to be most devastated about this situation is my mom and my grandma. Because me and my husband, we're going to be straight. We're going to be making new kids as we thinking about them old ones. Now we got stuff in your room just to put in storage for when the new kids get your age. Listen to your parents, because your parents can be like me. I don't have these videos to set to where kids can watch it, because these videos ain't for kids. Y'all getting snatched up at Chuck E. Cheese. Y'all ain't never gonna want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. So, therefore, you as a parent or a grown person watching this video, would you have what in there to defend your kid after you told your kid to go to Chuck E. Cheese? Or would you go make some more? That's the comment that I want. Is you making some more kids, or are you going to save the hard-headed ass kids that you already made? Because I'm making some more. I ain't got time for, a hard head make a soft ass. I don't have time for that. I don't. I got time for don't be so damn hard-headed, listen to your mom. That's what I got time for. But, like, comment, and subscribe. This video was so crazy. Y'all, it's Chuck E. Cheese. How are they turning up like this at Chuck E. Cheese? I am still mind blown. Ooh. Like, comment, subscribe. I usually say share if you want to, but share this with a parent. Share this with a parent so they can be aware of Chuck E. Cheese. All types of crazy shit is happening at Chuck E. Cheese. Love you guys. Bye.